Please. Madame Marie Papaschinopoulou, merci d'être avec nous. Vous êtes expert en affaires publiques maritimes avec plus de 25 ans d'expérience dans des domaines tels que le transport maritime, la logistique, l'environnement et l'industrie pétrolière. Vous avez enseigné les négociations internationales dans plusieurs institutions de renom. Vous conseillez également sur les risques réglementaires et les négociations internationales. Quel rôle joue la diplomatie maritime dans la prévention des litiges? Quelle place tiennent et le dialogue et la coopération? Élément de réponse avec vous, madame. Je vous en prie.
Merci bien. Bonjour, messieurs, dames. Je m'appelle Marie Papaschinopoulou. Je suis ravie d'être avec vous aujourd'hui, d'adresser cette conférence. C'est la 3e fois que je suis ici en Algérie. C'est presque un mois que j'ai... fait la connaissance de l'Algérie pendant le 2e. Merci bien, Saha, madame. Alors, je vais continuer en anglais parce que ça, c'est la langue de shipping, mais on peut continuer notre dialogue en ce qui concerne tous les issues qui sont d'intérêt pour vous pendant les pauses. So, thank you very much. And I will start by explaining and introducing to you today something which is really new. It's so new that my company, Mardiplo, has a trademark with the European Patent Office. And it's a new instrument, a new tool in shipping that you can all use in Algeria as well. And I'm delighted to be able to introduce this to you today because I think it is a tool for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, just briefly, I will be introducing maritime diplomacy and what this is all about. I'm sure you all know about public maritime diplomacy, like the one, for example, the state of Algeria is in, or, for example, the public diplomacy we are dealing with within the framework of international organizations like the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, but I'm sure nobody has heard about maritime corporate diplomacy. That is companies gaining the status of diplomatic actors and finding solutions to everyday problems through negotiations. So I will go through briefly the concept of maritime diplomacy and why maritime diplomacy. I will address the issue of the beneficiaries who can actually use this instrument. I will talk about some applications, some core values which have to do with corporate maritime diplomacy, some brief success stories, and perhaps share some photos. So why maritime diplomacy? We have lots of legal experts. Please. So now
yes,
it's
okay.
We have lots of legal experts with us, and I'm sure that you all know Professor, of course, as well. Actually, in shipping and in maritime transport, in the maritime industry, we have been able for quite some centuries to resolve our problems through mediation, through arbitration, and through litigation. These are 3 very successful formalized procedures that have served us well for quite a lot of time, but which I feel nowadays in an era of disruptions, constant disruptions in the maritime industry, that are still successful, but we need to supplement them with a tool, with an instrument which is more flexible, which is more reputation saving, and it's most cost saving, actually. So maritime diplomacy, if you look at the picture over there, is used in dispute resolution cases where actually we have tried mediation, we have tried arbitration, we have tried litigation, and they are either ineffective, so we have claims going on for 20 years, something like that, with no visible result, or sometimes all these procedures are also exceedingly cost, time, and reputation intensive. So to be honest, I have been myself for 20 years in Brussels. I have been the High Representative of the German Chambers of Commerce and Maritime Diplomacy, working with some of our speakers here, with Mr. Antonio Di Costa, for example. And I've seen public diplomacy in all its dimensions. I have also seen diplomacy that associations are doing, which is very important for the maritime industry and the Algerian maritime industry to have a strong association life, one that can represent you well in national and international fora. But what I have not seen, and I discovered it by chance to be honest, was how corporate diplomacy can help individual companies, shipping companies, insurance companies, in specific cases. This actually happened in 2019, just before COVID, as a matter of fact. I was in Athens talking to a ship owner who told me that, well, there was actually 5 or 6 companies, Greek and Danish and German ones, and they had some demurrage and hire claims for long, long years in a country in Southeast Asia. And they said they could find absolutely no way out. And I said, but you can negotiate a settlement, an out-of-court settlement with the government, because there we had a state receiver, and we can find a solution very soon. They said, what's that? I mean, we don't know this in shipping. We don't use this in shipping. I said, why don't you try it? They tried it, and in a year, they got a very, very beneficial out-of-court settlement, which was the beginning for me after and during COVID, that we all had some time to go around and walk, and clear our heads, and we were not traveling that much. I thought, well, actually, there is a gap in the market. Why don't we bring in a new tool which can address these kinds of problems quickly, saving reputation for companies, especially when they are negotiating with governments, giving companies leverage, which they are lacking when they are negotiating with governments, and all this in, let's say, a year, and with costs that definitely do not surpass the costs of the other instruments I mentioned. After that, I called one of my clients in this case, in this Southeast Asian country, who's a Greek ship owner, and I said, you know what? I have this idea of bringing this new business model into the market. What do you think? You know the vessel, you know the market, you have to tell me, you saw that there is success, do you think that we have a business case there? He said, yes, let's try it. And that's how we started our company Mardiplo 3 years ago, which is a startup, and as a startup it has already sold successfully 14 different cases in very difficult parts of the world, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, in Africa. Now, how do we do that? Actually, we negotiate a deal between a company or a pool of companies in the maritime sector and governments, of course, or other quasi-governmental entities. Sometimes we have also now clients that ask us to negotiate between the private sector and themselves. So you see what kind of potential there is there. We do that by building and managing soft power. Soft power is all about diplomacy. You know, nowadays, with all the geopolitical risks we are facing, and the maritime industry is facing actually everywhere in the world, why soft power is another instrument very much, I would say, en vogue nowadays, to increase your leverage and be able to negotiate more effectively. Because that's what you want practically as a ship owner, as a marine insurance company, as a P&I club, as a trader, as a charter. You want results soon, you want them cheap, and you want them with a reputation intact. So, of course, this always happens when we have and keep in mind that for diplomacy, we need to understand the context, we need to understand the country. In order to do so in so many countries in the world, we work very closely together with correspondent offices in those countries, with lawyers, of course, local lawyers. And then the result, I would say, is quite seamless. The idea, ladies and gentlemen, is not the results you have in a football game, like one wins and the other loses. The idea, is to come up with a settlement which is beneficial for both parties. And this is the success. So who are the beneficiaries of corporate maritime diplomacy? It could be ship owners, P&I clubs, ports, classification societies, charters, traders, yards. I don't have them here, but because we don't have them as a client yet, but perhaps this will change. So all these categories, all these parts of the chain of the maritime industry can actually negotiate deals. I was thinking of Algeria and how Algeria will forge its future in the maritime sector. And dispute resolution is just one of the possibilities you can use diplomacy, ladies and gentlemen. You can use it in claims handling, you can use it in negotiations on behalf of maritime clients, but what is most important for me, and here I draw upon my experience so many years representing the German maritime industry in Brussels. You know, Germany is exporting country, I think it's number 2 or 3 worldwide, so it heavily depends on exports. It has a very strong economic diplomacy and a very strong maritime economic diplomacy. So what I can tell you is that if you manage to come up with strong associations, strong institutions in Algeria that represent you as a maritime industry, you will not be just able to solve disputes, I guess in a way which is most beneficial for you and for the other parties. You will also be able, for example, to give good advice to the government. The governments all over the world need the advice, the concrete advice of the private sector in order to produce regulation, which is precisely what the maritime industry needs. Because we all know, everywhere in the world, we've seen that also in the European Union. It's what we've been doing 20 years. We've been advising the European Commission, the European Parliament, on how to produce regulation for the industry, which makes sense. This is easier said than done, but I can tell you that diplomacy can help you come up with the right platform to make sure that you can give the right advice to your government. Now, funding. Diplomacy can also open channels of funding. We've seen that in Brussels as well with the 10T networks. You know, you need ports. If you need ports, a great port is wonderful, still very difficult, right, to come up with. But the question is, even the best port, it's nothing worth if you do not have the infrastructure between the port and the markets you're going to serve. So for that, you definitely need funding, and diplomacy can also help you secure funding nationally and also internationally, because there is funding available from quite a number of international institutions. So last but not least, and I have been teaching for 25 years now internationally, negotiations and how to negotiate in the maritime industry. I believe very much that negotiations can be taught, should be taught, so that we can enable the actors, the stakeholders of the maritime industry to be more proactive and to be able to defend their interests in a better way. Now, core values in diplomacy, I would like to make this quite transparent from the beginning. You know, maritime diplomacy should have impact, should be discreet, should be based on collaboration, on cultural empathy, and mostly on integrity. which is definitely a core, the most important for me, core value in this business, where when you're negotiating about millions and millions with institutions, governmental, private actors. How do we work? You know, diplomacy is a science and it is an art. It is a science because there are rules on how to negotiate effectively. There is a method, there is a way. But it is an art because you always have to deal and to negotiate with people. And gaining access to people, understanding how people think, how people feel, what people really need, not just what they tell you they want in negotiations. It's essential and paramount for success. So how do we work? We always do in diplomacy a case review and we map the evidence. We go on with a diplomatic strategy. We need an engagement strategy, a mapping of the stakeholders to see with whom we are working. Then we go on and actually negotiate, which in itself is a science, I can tell you, but can be taught. As Socrates said, even virtue can be taught, and negotiations can definitely be taught. And implementation and closure, I'm saying that most of the people think that once a signature is on the paper, it's done. It's not done. I can tell you that trust but verify. Upon signing, you have to follow up and monitor closely the results. Briefly, some success stories so that you get an idea. Dispute resolution. Actually, this is why I'm in Algeria for the third time. We had an issue with a bank guarantee for 23 years. Believe me or not, there was an issue, a damage 23 years ago. It was paid with an amicable settlement actually in 6 or 7 months. I mean, the issue was absolutely finished, more or less, and we have still been dealing with a bank guarantee that has not been released for 22 years. You believe it or not? So this is an issue where negotiations can help a lot and did help a lot. I'm really delighted to announce today that we had great discussions with BEA, la Banque Extérieure d'Algérie, with BENA, Banque Nationale d'Algérie. Thanks also to our embassy here of the Hellenic Republic in Algiers. Thank you very much. Thanks to our correspondents, Mrs. Boudaba, who's here for us, Sahel Simar. Thanks to our lawyer, Maître Boukrou, we were able really to come to a very, very good result. So I think this is good news for Algeria because Algeria shows to the world that we are able to solve problems quickly, efficiently, and amicably. This is definitely good news. Claims handling, another perhaps small story.
Okay.
Thank you. I got 2 minutes to
Yes,
close
1
up?
minute more. Okay.
Oh, I like very much actually telling stories because I think people learn more from stories than from a lot of theory, and it's a little bit the teaching practice. Now, what do you do when, for example, you have a collision of a commercial ship, a vessel, a cargo, in a port with 2 warships? I mean, this is a very, very delicate, as you might imagine, issue. It's an issue which has, of course, a material value, but it also has a value and a sensitivity in terms of the country involved. So this is a typical case where negotiations and diplomacy can help you find the way out. For day-to-day operations, you know all the stories that you have in the port. Sometimes it really does help to have some kind of quick help. But diplomacy, again, can help you open new markets, find new investments for Algeria. It can help you create global strategic networks. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing is done in this planet, in this world, without people and the networks you need. And again, I'm saying that the Algerian maritime industry needs a regulation which fits its necessities. Not more, not less. Adequate one, precise one, and you are the ones who should be helping the administration to come up with such a regulation. So that's it. I will finish it now and I will be very
Thank you very
happy. Je
much.
serai ravie de discuter avec
Merci.
vous.
Je pense que nous allons prendre des questions globales, si vous voulez bien, puisque votre intervention est la dernière du panel. Monsieur Hatich, je vous en prie, montez.